The two sessions that I really appreciated that I'm looking forward to sharing with my students, the first one was former Ambassador Stevens' talk. It was so cool to hear not only about her time as ambassador, but also all the things that led her to being in that position. And then just talking about the US and South Korean relationship. And I think one thing she said that I'm also going to make sure I tell my students is the importance of the fact that she could speak Korean and how that really changed the dynamics. So I think that's something I'll definitely want to bring back to my students when we talk about this in American Studies. And then I was also really impressed by Professor Yoon's talk on where he broke down sort of the rationale for North Korea's nuclear weapons and kind of talking through all the different scenarios and how we can kind of eliminate this threat in the future potentially. And I also really enjoyed when he talked about the tit for tat crises, and he went line by line and talked about how this escalated this conflict in ways we could have done it differently. So I'm looking forward to bringing that slide in particular to my classroom and sharing that with my students.
Ambassador Stevens was phenomenal, just giving kind of a long, broad range review of Korean-American relations and from her point of view as a diplomat. But it was interesting to hear of her experiences as a Peace Corps volunteer, kind of boots on the ground, so to speak, and how much it's changed. And then she goes back as the first woman ambassador. So I think some of her perspectives on the Korean-American relations and foreign policy was really interesting, because I definitely talked about that in class. It's something I could take back with me. And Professor Yoon's talk on North Korea, I could have listened to it all day. He was just an incredibly gifted speaker, really charismatic. It was so much information. I know a lot about North Korea, but he was able to put it in a kind of a broader context of proliferation, security issues, more of the rationale from China's point of view, and just kind of the three-part problem that have to be solved in order to resolve the nuclear crisis, which is a good way to frame it. So he was just an unusually interesting and dynamic speaker. And that North Korea comes up a lot. I mean, it's of great interest to students. They're fascinated by just how different the culture is, the inherent danger, and it gave me a better sense of just how dangerous North Korea is, not just on the peninsula, but worldwide in terms of proliferation and some of its criminal activity. So I would definitely take all that back with me.